Welcome to episode number 141 of the Mediatwits. I'm Mark Glazer, executive editor of PBS Media Shift. Today we'll be talking about the Sony hack, possibly by North Korea, in order to wipe the hard drives of all the network within Sony Pictures Entertainment, release films that hadn't come out yet, and possibly a direct attack against The Interview, Seth Rogen comedy, which has now been pulled from theaters. We'll talk about what the media did in printing and running some of the stories and some of the information that was leaked, and also the repercussions in Hollywood around freedom of expression after the movie was pulled. First, I want a word from our sponsor. Running your own business requires focus, and so does parenting. Mediatwits podcast sponsor NextSpace created a place where parents could give their best quality of attention to both co-working space and childcare space under one roof. Learn more at nextspace.us/nextkids. I'm indeed at NextSpace right now, and my one-year-old Everett is next door. It's a great setup here in San Francisco. So first I want to introduce our panel. We have Alex Leo joining us from Yahoo, Andrew Lee from American University in San Francisco, Emily Yoshida at The Verge, Jeff Roberts from GigaOM, and Jefferson Yen, our producer in LA. So this hack has just been going on for the last few weeks, just information released about really embarrassing emails from a lot of the executives at Sony, inside information on budgets, all kinds of stuff and all kinds of grist for tabloids and others. And yet there was first this kind of question as to what should be run out of the leaked information. Some publications kind of took a little bit of a stand saying they weren't going to publish information that wasn't really vital. Emily, you wrote an interesting post on The Verge about your decision to run one piece of information that was around this Project Goliath, kind of the MPAA and movie studios, kind of what seems like an effort to fight piracy and possibly go up against Google. Can you explain a little bit about that project and also your decision in running stories from leaked information?
Got it. So the story was actually originally uncovered by two of our reporters, Russell Brandom and Ross Miller, and basically it's just a series of a series of conversations between the heads at Sony and different people within the MTAA, basically a campaign that they've mounted with tons of legal backing, where they're actually going to the state attorneys general and really kind of laying the groundwork for a campaign to discredit Google, so that if they were to launch some kind of SOPA-esque legislation a couple years from now, or try to get that going again, like anti-piracy, site blocking, that kind of legislation, that they wouldn't be blocked by Google and Wikipedia and these other internet entities, the way that happened a few years ago when they tried the first time. So when we kind of realized that this is what was happening, we had been a little bit on the fence. We had republished some other stories from some other sites that they had uncovered from the leaks. And keep in mind, like, everybody has these torrents that they've gotten from the leak, and everybody's just sort of sifting through different parts of it. Part of it is a little bit random what you uncover. And so, it's random, but it's also kind of a race to see who can get the good stuff first. And we kind of, we hadn't really been super aggressive about it at the outset, I think because it didn't occur to us that the material that was stolen, apparently in an act of aggression against the United States, which now we can basically confirm, that was fair game. Clearly, other outlets took less of a moment to think about that, and I don't even necessarily think that I don't judge them for that. It's just for us, we decided, and we're in a very nascent stage as far as our entertainment coverage goes, but this was like a really good opportunity to build trust and establish what we thought was an important story to cover, especially in as extreme a circumstance as this.
And what about Aaron Sorkin came out and, he has a movie, he wrote a screenplay for a movie, Steve Jobs, and some information about that was released. And he had this op-ed in the New York Times saying that basically the media is carrying water for North Korea in their attack against the U.S. by publishing a lot of this information, and, it shouldn't have been put out there. But it seems like that's kind of a strange argument to make in the digital age when things just get out there. And I mean, we've had so many leaks and hacks and information that's come out on all kinds of subjects before, and it seems like you're trying to stop basically a fire hose if you think you're going to really have everyone not publish that information.
Sure, and I think that that's a very site-by-site decision to make. I think for me, the stuff that I felt uncomfortable about was stuff that really only served to ridicule or make fun of Sony or their various projects, because there's nothing constructive there. I mean, we know that there's obviously problems and hypocrisy and laziness within the entertainment industry. That shouldn't be news. What is news is stuff like this MPAA story, even stuff I would argue like the emails between Amy Pascal and Scott Rudin where they were making racist remarks about President Obama. That's something that we deserve to know as a public about this huge corporation that is a multi-billion-dollar corporation who's actually at the top there. For smaller stuff that, like details about a Spider-Man movie or something, we didn't decide. We just didn't feel like that was worthy of passing on, because it's sort of abstract, and yes, after once this information is out, it can't go back in. And actually, as loath as I am to admit it, I agreed with a ton of what Aaron Sorkin had to say. I just think that he missed the larger point about that ultimately we are serving our readers, and I think that he interpreted that in a different way than I did. But I do think that there's an argument to be made that you are furthering an attack, at least in principle, by just spreading stuff that doesn't have any use for your readers.
Alex, I saw you nodding your head too. I know you've had some pretty big thoughts about what's going on with Aaron Sorkin, his commentary, and I know Kelly McBride had a really interesting piece talking about, it's okay to publish ill-gotten information as long as you verify the information and give it some context. I mean, do you agree with Kelly on that?
Yeah, I do. And actually, my first Mediatwits podcast, Kelly was on with us. So the day I start taking journalism advice from Aaron Sorkin, you can just put me out to pasture, because that man never sees the big picture, as far as I can tell. He also has a history of just utter disdain for anyone that is not from a large media organization that he is deemed worthy. So I think he created that line, I need a citizen journalist, like I need a citizen doctor, or something along them, paraphrasing. And, he hates the internet. He really, really, really hates the internet. And there's a reason he published it in the op-ed page of the New York Times and not on a blog that the people that are actually surfacing his content read. Anyway, so the larger point being, we've seen these leaks happen before in a major way, and people don't get as outraged by it because Hollywood is just an outraged machine. But in several years ago, TechCrunch got 300 documents from someone who stole them from Twitter.
Right.
And they decided not to publish the embarrassing personal detail things, but they did publish stories about the products they were going to release and blah, 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 and things like that. And I think there's totally huge stories that came out of here that we totally needed to know about, including the one that Maureen Dowd was showing Amy Pascal's husband a story in advance of publishing it for the New York Times, and the race issue that Emily brought up. So I really think that there are newsworthy things here. Is Jennifer Lawrence's Ghostbusters thing one of them? No, but there are lots of valid stories coming out of this.
Yeah, that's true. And so as far as who's kind of behind the hack and just the politics around that, Jeff, the first, we have this really strange thing where Wired comes out with this story by Kim Zetter that says, the flimsy evidence around North Korea involvement in the hack, and yet the U.S. government seems to be leaking all this information that they are confirming that this did come from North Korea. I mean, what do you make of these kind of conflicting reports around the hack?
I'm no cryptography expert, but based on what I've read on this, no, I mean, there's some people out there, including probably in your audience, who really know this stuff. But to the degree I know, or from what I understand, the best theory I've heard is that someone out there hacked it using commercially available malware and most likely sold it to North Korea to go root around and mess with Sony's world, which seems to me the most probable outcome. But I'm not a professional hacker myself, so I can't give a definitive answer.
And what does that mean? I mean, if let's say North Korea is involved in some way, what does that mean for kind of entertainment companies in general? I mean, how can people react knowing that that there's, this means increased security? I mean, there's been so many hacks. I mean, what can companies? I mean, in a movie studio too, we wouldn't have expected them to be, the place that, a foreign government would attack. We'd think it'd be infrastructure or taking on the U.S. in other ways. But the fact that, even an entertainment company is vulnerable is kind of leaves us in a strange position.
Not really. I mean, I think if anything, Sony was negligent here. I mean, China regularly engages in corporate espionage. They've hit every big tech company, every big American retailer. This is not new. I think the issue is, why didn't Sony do a better job of securing their system, especially after the massive PlayStation hack? I mean, this is just outright negligence. In part, from what I've read too, it sounds like the hackers, there's a security blogger, I think Brian Krebs or someone, who said that Sony, I guess, its cryptographic, its crypto key was compromised a year ago, meaning the hackers have been in there for up to a year or something. The fact of not being aware of that or warning people, I mean, I think Sony's being sued, and almost rightly, by former employees for such a slovenly job of protecting their system.
Yeah, and Andrew, did you want to jump in on that point about Sony and what they could have done and just how they look right now as a company?
Yeah, I mean, if you look historically, Sony's been one of the most vulnerable folks out there. They are on record as basically saying, since security is so hard, we just gotta sometimes just roll the dice. We can't secure everything, so therefore we have to accept some of those risks. And as we saw before, Jeff said that they've been compromised for a long time. I mean, some of the things that went on after they were hacked into to disseminate stuff, like actually running BitTorrent servers off of Sony hardware, or being able to sign stuff using the Sony certificate, is just really appalling, because those certificates should be really secured with an air gap, meaning that they shouldn't even be accessible via a networked easy network means. So some of those things that are coming out right now just clearly show that some of the most basic standards for a large company that you should be going with were not followed. And just even after the internal network was compromised, internal intrusion detection didn't sense anything for the better part of a year. So this is a real disaster. I mean, really nothing on the scale before. And the real scary thing for Sony going forward is the only real solution to this is to basically dump everything that they have right now and start from scratch, because you just cannot be sure going forward you've cleaned and disinfected your entire network of anything that could be compromised going forward.
Yeah, it just seems like a really they're in a terrible situation, and I mean, even their executives now look really bad, and Amy Pascal might not have a job for very long. Now let's talk a little bit about what happened since then. There was a threat by the hackers to do kind of a terrorist attack once the movie was released on Christmas, and the largest movie theater chains basically pulled out from showing the movie, and Sony decided just not to release the movie. Emily, I'm just curious what you think. I mean, there's been a complete firestorm on Twitter and social media, basically attacking Sony and the theaters for not standing up to what they think is probably an empty threat. I mean, what do you think about Sony's move, and was it really cowardice or was it practical?
Well, first I want to bring it back to our friend Aaron Sorkin, who wrote last night, fired off his hot take last night that this is all to blame because of the media. The media perpetrating this leak. Just promoting it was to blame for Sony eventually being forced to dump the movie. So there's that. I know he couldn't be with us today. So, but yeah, I mean, I I think this sets a terrible precedent. I'm with everybody else who's upset about this, and I don't. And it's a tough question because I really don't feel like the theaters had any other choice in this situation. It's been about 2 years, I guess, since Aurora happened with the Dark Knight Rises. I mean, that's still very fresh in our memory. We know what a potentially very scary situation looks like in a movie theater, and that's not something we want to even take the risk of having happen again. But at the same time, I mean, I really think if there's anything to blame for this, the way that this happened, it's Sony. It's Sony's response to the hacks in the first few days when they really could have made a really definitive response to the hackers and been very public with their defense of this film and their right to release this film. They never made a statement like that. It seemed like most of their energy was being used to, cover themselves and spare their reputations. We don't know what kind of private threats might have been made to them. There were notes from the hackers in some of the leaks that said check your inbox. So we don't know if they had any personal threats made against them. But if it was the threat of releasing more incriminating information, I still don't think that having this extremely depressing precedent set about how we can express ourselves and what kind of movies people feel comfortable releasing, I don't think that it was worth it to have that now at risk.
Hey, Jeff, do you want to jump in on that, on kind of the threat, whether this threat was really credible?
Well, Homeland Security said it wasn't. I think the best explanation I've heard is studio executives off the record told the Wall Street Journal they're worried about the holiday box office, because I'm not going to be that afraid of a terrorist threat. The bigger issue is there's multiplexes where that if the interview was there, people wouldn't go to all the other movies and wouldn't buy the popcorn and the soda. And that's, I think, even if only 10% of America is that paranoid and they won't go to the multiplex in Nebraska because of that, all the big hits are coming out right now. And if anything, the interview would have done better than expected because all the publicity is supposed to be a bad movie. However, this specter might sort of depress or dissuade other people from going to take their family to Elvis and the Chipmunks. And even though the threat is bogus, the perception is enough in the studio and the movie industry's view to cancel it. But I completely agree with Emily that it was a sort of reprehensible decision.
Yeah, and I mean, don't you think that if they did release it and there was this kind of threat that Americans would unite to go to see the interview as their patriotic duty or something, I could almost see this as like a conservative cause. It's very strange when you think about this is a comedy, this is a satire. It's just this entire story. I mean, this is probably the best movie that Sony's got going if they do a story on what happened to them.
I think that Sony missed a giant opportunity here to gain back some goodwill, both within the entertainment industry, in the media industry, and for their fans who are following this. If they had decided to just release the film for free online and say, look, you may not want to go to the theaters because of this hack, but we're not going to let them hold us hostage, and we're not going to let them hold this movie that we stood behind, whether it's good or bad, hostage either. And here it is. And you watch it, I think it would have done incredibly well. As
right.
Jeff said, like, everyone would have watched it for one reason or another, as you mentioned. Like, it would have become a cause célèbre to see this terrible James Franco movie. And that this was just a missed opportunity. I feel like they're in crisis mode. They hired David Boies as their lawyer. They're sending out crazy emails. Like, they just need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture.
No, this is the classic internet description of the Streisand Effect, right? In the attempt to shut down the movie, more and more people are interested in it. In fact, there probably will be much more exposure to this movie than if nothing had happened at all, right? But the problem with Sony trying to Bigfoot it and trying to make a point now to be defiant is that Sony is in no position to be strong about anything, right? It still has very big doubts about whether it can recover from this anytime soon, and they don't know the nature of what their systems are like right now in terms of being secure. And so I think they might even be open to more vulnerabilities going forward, because who knows what things are planted in their network. So I don't see Sony doing anything but moves of being on defense rather than being on offense here. unfortunately, because we all would like to see someone stick it to the folks who perpetrated this to make sure that there's no kind of a reward for doing these types of things.
And where does that really leave, like, the U.S. government and even the Japanese government in this? I mean, it's a really tricky situation with North Korea, and I mean, I know Japan was trying to come up with some peace, some sort of agreement over conflicts that they had with North Korea. I mean, it seems like what can be the response to a foreign attack on a U.S. entertainment company? I mean, we're in like such a strange, uncharted territory. It's hard to say what will happen next.
Still not convinced, we can pin it all on North Korea. As Jeff mentioned, the things point in that direction, but we run the risk of rushing into a conflict if we have such a low standard for proof, right? So I still believe we should have the beyond a reasonable doubt kind of standard here, whereas I think a lot of folks are rushing in now as saying that signs point to, and I don't think that's a good enough rationale for doing anything rash in this area.
Emily, did you want to jump in about that, about what the U.S. might do?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been confirmed by U.S. officials that they say that North Korea was behind it without any qualifications. So I don't know.
Until they're named, I'm not going to believe it. They have to be named. They have to be on the record.
Yeah. I mean, what is just? Oh, something came on my. But yeah, there was also the announcement today that the White House was considering some kind of appropriate response to these hacks and threats. I don't know what that means. That was just a headline, like it was just a breaking thing that I saw right before I got on this podcast. So but it is, at the same time, it's like, yes, this is strange new territory. I also feel like this is what it's going to look like going forward. Like this is how war is going to happen, and we were so prepared, and people had been thinking about these major breaches happening to the Pentagon or to the CIA or something, and it happened to an entertainment company, and it's we're completely living in the future right now, and it's unprecedented.
Jeff, do you have any thoughts about this too?
I mean, I confess this is pretty deep foreign policy waters, and I think you alluded to it. No, I mean, because there should be a response, but Japan is negotiating for the release of its Korean hostages. China might have given support to Korea in this endeavor. So, yeah, I agree with Emily and others that we have to tread carefully in it. But, I mean, I think we have to be careful in saying this is brand new. Recall 2 or 3 Christmases ago when China got deep into Google's system. I mean, I think corporate espionage is different. I mean, this is more aggressive. This is bordering more on war. But recall, too, when I think it was Russia launched a cyber war in Lithuania. But, yeah, we are clearly in the new world right now. And as the fact is, an entertainment company sure publicizes that fact, and that perhaps any target's safe. And that no target's safe, I should say.
Yeah, and so what about the long-term effect of this, and kind of the chilling effect when it comes to what people will parody? I mean, I think in the past, this, look at something like, The Dictator with Sacha Baron Cohen. It's like a made-up character. I mean, they decided to make this specifically Kim Jong-un, and that, I mean, that's kind of crossing the line in a way too. But what happens to kind of edgier productions in the future? Because of what happened, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I started out in comedy, and I cannot imagine this is going to slow down the world of edgy comedy. Studio system, I don't think we have time on this podcast to talk about the Sony's trajectory anyway, what was going to happen to Sony before these hacks happened, but there's certainly not going to be any dearth of things that happen online, that videos that will be made, movies that will be made in reaction to this. I can guarantee you that everyone at Funny or Die is scrambling to do as many videos as humanly possible, making fun of Sony and making fun of Kim Jong-un right now. And to say that this is like, I have a problem blurring the line here between, national politics and this being an entertainment company that didn't take its security seriously. They were warned several times. They cut back on their IT system. Yes, this is a terribly scary precedent, but it also is a wake-up call to everyone that this is not a way you can operate a company anymore, just period. And it shouldn't just be North Korea hacking you to prove that. You should know that already. There's people that you hire to create security in your system, and it's not the U.S. government's responsibility to make sure that Sony has its shit together. Now we're in a place where we have to react, but that's their fault.
Yeah, and this could lead to a lot worse than this. I mean, this is just about one comedy. I mean, you imagine that if we know that companies are this lax in their security, it could be worse. Jeff, did you have thoughts on that?
I just want to go back to what was said on, I think, Alex, respectfully, I disagree that, this is not too troubling because a bunch more comedy will flow out. I think you're right, but I dislike the precedent because I'm thinking of the Innocence of Muslims video, which was a terrible, inoffensive, inappropriate video, yet a California court agreed to shut it down and order YouTube to remove it for suspect copyright reasons. And what we're having here is the norms of sort of overseas, often, repressive regimes trying to sort of impart their views on free speech into the Western media sphere. And that, I think, is very troubling. The Innocence of Muslims situation proves that, and we've just seen if North Korea can do that, warn they're going to blow us up if we don't remove media they dislike. Where does this stop? So I mean, perhaps that's the worst case scenario, but I think there is something afoot here.
Andrew, do you take anything? Are there any positives we can take out of this story? I mean, are there lessons that we can learn? I mean, or is this just kind of like, this is cyber war. This is what it's going to look like. This is how we're going to have to live our lives, worrying about every email we send, not only just from government surveillance, but from hackers that are going to take it. I mean, it just seems like it's a dark future.
No, I would echo what Alex said, and I think we have to all be very mindful about the subtle propaganda of what terminology is used, right? Cyber attack, cyber war, these type of things. Or is it simply, not simply, or should we look at it more as this lax, sloppy corporate standards for data security? That's very different than saying that a foreign entity attacked a tanker in the middle of international waters and destroyed infrastructure and stuff like that. So I think it's very important to keep those two things separate. And I agree with Alex that Sony's infrastructure was ripe for exploitation, and of course the U.S. should press its case if indeed there was a foreign actor involved. But to equate it to war or an attack that warrants some type of military-like response would be really, really a bad move altogether.
Emily, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about several hypotheticals in this, like what, different kinds of movies that this could potentially be that would, and whether or not they would be treated in the same way. Part of me is just, I mean, The Interview is supposed to be a bad movie, not that is neither here nor there, but part of me almost feels like that's part of the reason why nobody at Sony came out, like, vehemently defending it. And I wonder, like, what if it was an Angelina Jolie produced documentary about human rights in North Korea? Would that be something that we would still screen, like defend our right to screen? Is comedy treated as less important for some reason? How much of this is money? How much of this is actual confidence in their product? I mean, it's a lot to think about going forward, especially now that the floodgates have apparently been opened for us to be bullied into dumping movies.
For sure. Jeff, any other thoughts about it?
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. I mean, the floodgates are open. What's going to happen now? And also, I liked Andrew's point that this is a real wake-up call for corporate security. I mean, if this doesn't persuade companies to get serious about encryption and really look after this stuff, I mean, that's what's it going to take? So, I mean, if we want the shred of good, this is a wake-up call, and hopefully everyone is having emergency meetings with their IT teams in companies across the country.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks everyone, and I appreciate you joining us for the discussion. It is going to be interesting to see how this plays out and where the movie ends up on, the black market or posted online. I mean, we know we'll get to see it, whether it's good or bad. I mean, Judd Apatow says it's brilliant, but I don't know if anybody else thinks that. So anyway, I want to thank our panel, Alex Leo joining us from Yahoo, Andrew Lee at American University, Emily Ishida at The Verge, Jeff Roberts at GigaOM, Jefferson Yen, our producer. We want to thank our sponsor, NextSpace and NextKids. You can learn more about their program at nextspace.us/nextkids. We'll be off for the holidays and join you back again first week of January. I hope you all have a great holiday season and take care.